demonstrator with Stampin' Up! In Spokane, Washington. I come to you live every Wednesday night with 3 new projects that I made, and I show you how I made them, and we have a great time together. If this is your first time here, welcome. I'm so glad you could join us. If you are returning, thank you. Your continued participation is what helps to grow our little community, and I love seeing how it's grown. I'm just going to give it a minute for people to find us, and while we're doing that, I am pulling this up on my main computer so that I can see your comments on the screen. So give me just a moment here. Okay, it's not showing up. Bear with me here. There we go. Okay, hey John, welcome. Okay. All right, so this is just a reminder to everybody and info for those of you who are here for the first time. I love it when you participate in the conversation, whether you're talking to each other, asking questions, answering questions, talking to me, offering suggestions, any of the above. I love that. So to encourage it, everybody who comments on this video, their name will go into a drawing that I will award a prize for next week. So this is not limited to people who are watching this live. If you're watching this as a replay, either here on Facebook or on YouTube, still make sure you leave a comment. Even if all you do is say hi and tell me where you're from. I love to hear where everybody's from. Even if that's all you do, you will still qualify for your name to go into the drawing for the prize. So make sure you comment, and the more you comment, the more fun we have. So I'm trying to think if I've got much to tell you this week. Hey Nancy, welcome. Last week I mentioned that my doctor had, my orthopedist had sent on my information, referred me to the next surgeon. I saw the next surgeon today, and he was in agreement that that's the next best step. So that is coming up. He said he's hoping to have it do it in the next 2 to 4 weeks. It just depends on how quickly insurance gets back with an approval and all that. So I will keep you guys posted, because of course that's going to impact my schedule for these videos. So I will let you know what is going on with that. I'm going to go, a couple more people here. We've got Joyce and we've got Judy. Welcome everybody. So anyway, so that's the update there. I don't think I really have much else to tell you guys about. It's just hey Kathy. It's just a busy week at work. As I mentioned before, the first half of the month we're busy closing out the prior month, and so this time of the month is really insane, and this month is no different than normal. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera around. We're going to award our prize for commenting last week. I got a fun card in the mail from one of you who is a regular visitor here when we do this every Wednesday, and so I want to share the card she sent me. And then we're going to get going on our cards. So give me just a second, we'll get it all turned around. Okay. All right, can you believe that? That's almost straight. Right out of the gates, it's almost straight. Let's see here. Okay, whoops, little too far, little too far. Okay, so first thing I want to share with you is the card I received. Oh no, now we're really crooked, and you know I can't handle that. You know I can't handle it. Okay, so this card came from Marcia Cullibert, and she won one of the packets that I give out as a prize every week, and so she made me a thank you card with it, and this is a really cool little fun fold, and I'll show it to you. So this ribbon, let me show you, this tucks under it to hold the card shut, and it's just tied around this flap here, but isn't that cool? I really, really like this. I love it, Marcia. So there we go. So I might be making one like this pretty soon. I've made similar ones, but I've never done it where I use the ribbon on the side to hold it shut. And I think that is such a great idea. I absolutely love that. So great job. Hey, Mary, welcome. Okay, so this week's winner, oh, it's my air conditioner. Thank you, Joyce. Hang on. There we go. Everything should be better now. Okay, so I have a packet a lot like the one I put together last week, and it's using the Dainty Flowers Designer Series paper with a little bit of our trim. I can't remember what this trim was called. Hey, Kathy, welcome. And then some of our, I can't even remember what they're called, but they're fun little gems. They're really pretty. They're bright, and I love them. And this week's prize is going to Jenny Hoppenrath Betts. So congratulations, Jenny. If you want to send me your mailing address, you can either send it here on Facebook through private message, or you can email me at stamphappenings@gmail.com. I just realized that's kind of not very clear, huh? Anyway, if you want to send me your mailing address, I can get this popped in the mail to you. So congratulations, Jenny. Let's see here. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. This first card, I decided to start with the most time-consuming one. It's a fun one, but it takes a little bit of time. And we're using the Playing in the Rain bundle. That means you can buy the stamps and the dies together for a 10% discount. It's a great set, and I love that the dies have a bunch of extra dies. There are dies that match several of the stamps, but there are also extra dies like the butterflies and bridge and little stumps and bow ties for the animals and just all sorts of fun stuff. And then I also am using the basic borders dies, and I don't use these very often, and every time I do use them I think, why don't I use these more often? They're really nice little addition to your card to just make it a little bit different by giving it a fun decorative edge. So, hey Nell, welcome. So here's this week's card. And the one thing I'm not quite sure how I feel about it is it doesn't really lay flat. Usually when I have cards that don't lay flat like this, I tie a ribbon or something like that around it. So I just have to live with the fact that it kind of pops up a little bit. Now you could, let me show you, you could kind of tuck this under the umbrella like that, and that would hold it down, but I thought it was weird because it doesn't hold down this end, so it doesn't lay quite right. So I thought it still looked better like this. So anyway, so this is the card we're going to make. And of course, we're going to decorate our envelope to match. So let's get going. Let's do the envelope first. We're going to do the envelope, and we're also doing the white background for the front of the card, because we're doing the same thing on both. So this piece of basic white is 5 1/4 by 4 inches. And then you've got your envelope here. And what we're going to do, doesn't matter which one we start with really. I need to get my, let's see, these inks are all at the bottom. I've got my Balmy Blue ink. I also have a blending brush. I have a blue one. Let's see. A blending brush. Lucy, rock, stay outside. Oh, please. She just brought a big one in too, darn it. Okay, so we're going to start with that. We're also going to use the little raindrop dies. So let me find those. Here we go. And then, where did I put it? Oh, okay, so here's a little tip that I'll give you for these dies. I took some cardstock and I created a template with this border right here. And that way, what I could do, I'll show you here. I could create these clouds in the background. And then I just took this piece and I stored it, I store my dies in these little plastic sleeves, and I just stored it in here because then the next time I want to do something similar, I already have a template. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this mouse. We don't need that. Okay. And I'm going to take my blending brush. And you know, I don't have a blending brush for every single color, but I do have separate blending brushes for like all my blues, all my greens, my purples, my reds. So I do have a few, but you don't need to have one for every single color. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little ink on here. Sort of tap that. And now I'm just very lightly going over this, and I'm doing circles. And it takes a few passes over it before you really start to see it, because I'm not doing it very hard, because I do want it to be a little lighter. And by doing the circles, it blends a little easier, and it also gives sort of an uneven, I don't know what the word is, the color, it's not solid. So it kind of already looks a little bit like the sky anyway, because there's parts that are lighter than others. You can kind of see that on the camera, see how there's little lighter spots here and there. So let's go ahead and maybe do one more pass with it. Now you see me here, I keep tapping my brush on the side before I go in, and that's to get the extra ink that's just sitting on the tips of the bristles. If you don't, what happens is it'll leave like little splotch marks when you put it onto your paper. So I tap it here, and then I start swirling and come on. So I'm already swirling when I bring my brush in. Now I'm going to take my template, and in hindsight, I probably should have made this a little bit longer, and you know, maybe I will next time, I don't know. But I'm going to kind of do this at different angles. And I'm just going around this edge here. I'm not going to go all the way to the top, because I just want the edges of the clouds to be darker, like that. So now I'll layer it a little bit here. And again, I'm just continuing with circles. See how that's giving that look of a lot of different clouds there? Again, I'm just kind of trying to stick close to the edge so that the clouds themselves lighten as they go up. They're darkest toward the bottom of the cloud. See, this does go pretty quickly. Oops, see, that's why I kind of wish I'd made it a little darker, but I think I might be able to fix that. Oh, you know what? That's going to be covered in part by my grass anyway, so we'll be okay. Well, maybe it won't be, I don't know. But that's okay. There. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and put my template. Oh, we're not going to put, I was going to put my template away, but we still need to do the envelope. So we're going to do the same thing on the envelope. And we're going to stick a little piece of paper under the flap so that we don't get ink all over the rest of the envelope, just the flap. So start out by just giving it a little light base of color. I don't even think I need to do multiple layers there now. And so now I'm just going to do the same thing I did on the piece of paper. Sticking close to that edge. It's kind of funny, usually when I sit down to make my cards, it takes me maybe about 3-ish hours to come up with all 3 cards from start to finish. And the night I did this one, I did so much fussing with it, and having to redo sections because of measurements and so on. It took me 3.5 hours just to do this one card. Okay, so I think, well, maybe one more. Oh, and we forgot to do the raindrops. So we've got to put our raindrops on too. Okay, so now I can put my template away. And see, I'm just putting it in the back of my little sleeve here so I have it for next time. And I'm just going to run my brush over my background, my scrap paper here, just to get some of that extra ink off of it. And now I'm going to take my raindrops. One thing to watch, I don't know if anybody else has this problem. Oh, I guess I still need my paper. I don't know if anybody else has this problem, but I always have to really pay attention before I start stamping the raindrops because I always do it upside down. I guess maybe for some reason when I look at it, I feel like the stamp looks like it goes this direction. But if you look at the details, it goes this direction. So I'm just kind of placing these sort of everywhere. There. Now we'll do that on the piece of paper for the card. Again, just sort of randomly placing them everywhere. There, I think that looks good. Clean off my stamp. Okay. And we'll put away the blue for a little, actually I think I'm done with the blue now. Now let me show you our card base. This piece, I cut my piece of cardstock lengthwise, so it's 5.5 inches wide and it's the full 11 inches long. And then I scored it at 2.5. Oh good, Joyce says she just got her blending brushes. My tip on the blending brushes is take a very light touch. If you do it too hard, if you press too hard, then they don't blend quite as easily. So make sure you use a light touch. Okay, so I'm taking this side here, and that's where my score line was at 2.5. And now I'm just going to fold this side in. And I'm going to use my bone folder. Paper has a direction it likes to fold. So if you are folding it, if you've got your regular piece of paper, I mean, like a basic card base. Hang on here, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so this card, where it's 8.5 inches by 5.5 inches and you score it in the middle at 4.25, folds like this. Paper will naturally fold this way quite easily. I still like to use a scoring blade and a bone folder to get a nice sharp crease, but it does it on its own pretty well. When you are folding it you've cut it lengthwise like this, you can see how it kind of buckles up a little bit where I folded it. It doesn't like to do that as much, and so it's really important to have something like a bone folder or even the edge of your stamp, something that you can use to really flatten down that crease. Joyce loves my clouds, my happy little clouds. It's a Bob Ross, is that his name? Bob Ross moment. Okay, so now what we're going to do, hang on, I'm going to get my my cutting and embossing machine. We're going to use that quite a bit on this card. Hold on. Okay, oh, I guess move my keyboard, it'll free up a little more room for us. Okay. Now, I'm going to take a strip of basic white, and what I did is this strip is, let me double check before I tell you. Yeah, it's 2.25 inches. Is it 2.25? It's actually 2 and, I have to think here, 3/16. And I know it sounds silly to have done it that way, to do that 16th, but the reason I'll show you is because on this edge I wanted to have the 1/4 inch
border. Well, actually it ends up being like an 1/8, but I wanted this size of a border all the way around here. Down here, I actually wanted it to be a little closer. It ended up not being that way, but that's why I cut it sort of funny. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this up. I'm going to get out my Post-it tape. And I'm going to position this so that it's flush with the end of my card base. This color, by the way, is one of our new colors, the Azure Afternoon. So it's lined up along the bottom there. It's a little lower than it's going to be when I put the card together up here. And I'm going to, actually think I want to use 2 pieces. And I'm going to go ahead and hold this in place because I don't want it moving around. And then I'm going to take my border, and I'm using the cloud one again. Only this time I'm cutting with it instead of coloring with it. And I'm just going to go right along this edge here. Let's see. You know what? I think maybe I want to cut a little bit more. Helps if I get the die lay in the right direction though, doesn't it? So I've got my tape here. And I'm just going to line this up so that it's kind of however I want my clouds to go. I have a little extra, and I'm going to set the tape to the side because, like I said, we're going to use the cutting and embossing machine quite a bit tonight, and I can reuse my tape. Now what I'm going to do is lay this down. Your machine can cut through 2 layers of cardstock. It kind of fights you a little bit. It doesn't like it, but it can do it. So what I like to do is I roll it through as far as it needs to go, and then I roll it back. That gives it kind of a second opportunity that if it didn't cut all the way through, and it usually does, but if it didn't cut all the way through, it now can go through a second time to get that last residual bit that's uncut. All right, so now, I'm trying to move stuff out of the way here. Okay, so now let's take our tape off. Because it's gone through the machine a couple times, that tape is pressed down there pretty strongly. So you want to be careful tearing it off, even though it's Post-it tape. The other thing is, because it's gone through a couple times, it does leave a little bit of sticky, residual sticky stuff on there. So just take your adhesive eraser, and it comes right off. But yeah, I think that's from running it through twice, that it just, pushes it down that much harder. Okay. See, it doesn't just pull off quite as easy, and I want to make sure it doesn't tear my paper. So I'm being very cautious with it. There we go. Now the reason I laid the white piece right on there and I taped it in place where I wanted it is because now when I adhere it, I want it to be up just a little bit so that I've got just that little bit of the edge around on the bottom of the clouds. And I want them to line up correctly, and still center this white piece where I want it. So that's why I taped it in place first and cut the 2 pieces together. Okay. Come on, you got to go back in your little case with your friends. Now I'm going to take my adhesive eraser. You guys know I use mine all the time. If you are new and haven't seen one of these before, this is not something Stampin' Up! Carries. I just bought mine on Amazon. They're only a couple bucks. And I use mine all the time. And it's getting that residual sticky off. Oops, as I bend the paper. I don't like it when that happens. Because then it doesn't lay quite flat on the card, and I don't like that. Kind of a perfectionist when it comes to stuff like that. Hey, Marcia, welcome. Oh, Kathy likes the clouds too. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can flatten this out just a little bit because that just really bothers me. Okay, that's all I'm going to get out of it. Okay, now what I'm going to do is see this piece comes right off. And now we have our card base. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, so now let's do a little bit more stamping. And for this, I'm going to use my black Memento ink. And I've got the little fox guy. And I have flowers. Oh, I already did the flowers just because I did want to save some time because I knew this card was going to take a little bit longer. And, you know, the flowers, I didn't do any kind of shading or anything like that. So I just did them ahead of time. And I did 2 sets of the flowers and cut them out. But we're still going to do the fox and the sentiment. That bugs me a whole lot. Okay. And I'm going to stamp this right about here. There we go. Oh, it kind of messed up my A a little bit. That's good. Hi, Jackson. Hi. Okay. So I'll set this aside until I'm ready for it. And then I have a scrap piece to stamp my little fox guy on. With bigger stamps, I like to stamp the ink onto the stamp versus the stamp onto the ink. It just gives me a little more control to make sure I'm getting equal coverage everywhere. There we go. Look at him, isn't he cute? This is such an adorable set. Stampin' Up! Really does a great job with its critters. Okay. Put my ink away because these pads do dry out pretty easy, the Memento and the Stays On pads. Okay, now a lot of different colors went into these, but I'm not doing the flowers, so that cut it down a little bit. Look at all these colors, you guys. Okay. So let's go ahead and start with the fox. And I wanted him to have a little bit of lighter coloring on the bottom part of his chin there and his tail. So what I did is I started with, this is just our ivory colored Stampin' Blend. Actually. And all I did here is kind of color him in. Like that. And then I'm also doing the same on the tail. Usually I start with my darker color. Tonight I did not. And I would be happy to share with you the reason for that if there was such a thing. I don't know why I started with the lighter one first. Okay, so now I also have, this is the number 600 in our naturals, or I think that's what they're called, naturals. And I'm just going along kind of the edge here where he's gonna blend in with the rest of the face. And then I wanted a little bit on the tail. Oh, Lucy, you turkey. Okay, so now I'm just going to kind of blend these a little bit where I have my darker edge because I want these to come together a little bit better so it doesn't look quite so stark. I'm not going to worry about this side of his face with the blending too much quite yet because I'm still going to add the other color. I think this will work better with the bullet tip. Now the color does change a little bit as it absorbs into the paper a little. So what I like to do is get it to where it's kind of what I think I want, but then leave it because I can come back if it needs a little bit more. Hold on, please. I need to take something from Lucy. Oh, she's a little monster. Okay, so moving on. Now what I'm going to do is I want to color the fox, and I wanted him to have kind of reddish tint to him, but I didn't want him to be too orangey red. I wanted a little bit of brown. So I've got the light and dark Cajun craze, and then I also have the number 200 in the naturals to add that little bit of brown. So let's start with the dark with the Cajun craze. And I'm going to go along the edge of his ear. I want to go kind of along the edge of his tail. Sometimes with something like that, it's kind of easier to use the brush tip because then you can just, you know, it doesn't give you such a distinct line. And then, let's see, we've got his little paws, his little hands, and we have his little beaks. Okay. Now, before I go in with the light Cajun craze, I'm going to take this 200 and I'm going to go just on this outer edge. And I'm not going to fill in nearly as much as I did with the dark Cajun craze. I just want some on the edge there. So maybe a little on his ears. The other ears, I could probably put a little bit there. Put a little bit on his legs. And then when I blend it, it just gives some really nice shading when you add that third color like that. So, oh, and the other thing I wanted to do is I also wanted to take this brown and I wanted to get, oh, you know what? I forgot to color his face. Let's do his face too. So, got my dark Cajun craze. And I'm doing kind of the back side of his head. Again, I think the brush tip sometimes just helps on that first swipe with the dark. And then we're going to add a little bit of the brown. Make sure we get these little marks there. They're intended to be kind of shadow a little bit. Now we're going to take our light Cajun craze. And we're going to just color in the rest of the parts. And make sure we blend. We're going to blend the edge there where the light and dark Cajun craze meet. We're also going to blend where the dark Cajun craze and that 200 brown, whatever you want to call it, meet. There. And we'll do his little head. Oh, that's a smart way to do it, Joyce. Joyce says she's got her catalog with her as she watches, so she can kind of be shopping along, seeing what I use and how I use it. And There we go. I want to take that dark one and do his eye. I didn't accent his eye, and I should have. And now we're gonna, can't forget about his little tiny ears and his little legs. With these smaller bits like the ears, sometimes it's easier to use the bullet tip because you just have a little bit more control with it. So you don't go out of the lines as easily. Okay. Oh, finish his little hands. There. Oops, I kind of want to blend here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back with my ivory. Actually, here's where I used the 600, huh? So let's take the 600 again. And we're just blending where those colors come together. There. Isn't he cute? So now I'm going to move these out of the way just because there's so many that we're using tonight. Now what I'm going to do is I'm doing that 3-color technique again, where I've got my there's 3 shades, and I move the darkest one off to the side for a minute. In this case, the darkest one is our dark blueberry bushel, and then I have the light and dark azure afternoon. So I start with the dark azure afternoon, so it's kind of my middle color. And here is where I'm going to go over kind of the edge. And, you know, do about a third or half of the umbrella. And let's get his little hat. Same thing. And his jacket. And maybe I should be using the bullet tip to do the edges here, just because, like I said, you have a little more control and it's just easier. It's not that one ends up looking any better than the other. It's just you have a little more control, and I tend to go out of the lines. So, okay. So now I'm going to take my darkest one, and this one is the dark blueberry bushel. And I'm going to use my bullet tip because I want the control. And I'm also going to use it to go over the shade lines that Stampin' Up! Has provided. Even in the area where I'm going to use my lighter color, I'm going to do that. These little buttons. Okay, now I've got my light azure afternoon. Color in there, trying to be careful to stay in the lines. And I'm just kind of blending those darker lines a little bit, just so they don't look quite so stark. And now remember, we used our darker colors over on this side. So I'm wanting to blend them all in really well. Now this particular color pairing, I found that at this point in the game, you can't see necessarily a huge difference. You can see a little bit, but not a huge. But this one, you really can see it once it all absorbs into the paper a little bit better. I don't think I took my dark and did much right here. Okay, and I think I want a little bit more of it here with his jacket as well. So see, I'm not going out as far as I did with the darker Azure Afternoon. So what ends up happening is you're kind of doing a gradation of dark to light from left to right, or whichever direction you go. But I've just found that third color seems to make it pop a little bit more. And the size of what I'm coloring dictates sometimes whether or not I do that too, because when it's really small, like the ears, I only did the 2 colors on the ears because there wasn't a whole lot of room to do much more than that. And you don't want it to look messy. Okay, look at him. And by the magic of the interwebs, we have flowers right there. So let's go ahead and cut out our fox. Get that die out. And of course, I'm going to tape it in place because I don't want my die to slide around. This one was a little tricky because if you have it too far in any one direction, it kind of chops off the very edge of your image, so you want to be careful. Oh, thanks, Mary Lou. And welcome, by the way. I don't think I saw you sneak in here. I'm trying to line it up with the point on the end of the umbrella for starters. That kind of helps me make sure I've got it aligned properly. I think I'm in a good spot, so. Okay, I think he'll stay in place like that. Do you hear my herd of elephants? Also known as my dog. Okay, let's see here. Looks like it was maybe already sliding around a little bit. Okay, so let's push this through so we can cut it. So a big thing, I don't know how many of you guys are into TikTok, but I watch a ton of it because I have a sad social life. But anyway, a big thing I've noticed on there lately is people eating freeze-dried candies. Have any of you guys seen this? Well, I decided to try some on my own the other day. I'll have to show you what I got. But I ordered some freeze-dried taffy, and then some of the banana Laffy Taffy freeze-dried. And then they also sent a little sample of some freeze-dried Skittles. And they're really interesting because they taste exactly the same, but completely different, texture, and they're very interesting. Okay, so we got our little foxy fox here. And I already cut this out. This is my piece that's going to be our grass. And for this, I just used this one. And I just put it at an angle on a piece of cardstock and cut my ground so that it wasn't even. Susan, it is a bad habit. If you're not a watcher, don't start. Because it's one of those things that you're like, oh, I'll just watch for a couple minutes. And then it's 4 o'clock in the morning. And I blame my boss. She's the one who got me started. Okay, so now I wanted to give the ground a little texture as well. I just didn't want it to be quite so flat because we have such a nice textured background with our sky. So I have the garden green cardstock, my garden green ink, and my green blender brush. Get a little little ink on there. And I just kind of went over it in some places. I'm not doing anything really particular. I just wanted sort of a mottled look. See, it's nothing in particular, but you can see how it's not flat. Get the extra off my brush. It doesn't get all the extra off, but it gets some off, so at least it doesn't get ink all over everything when you put it, back with other supplies. Okay, let's start piecing this guy together. We'll start with the inside. And I just stamped some flowers to match the flowers we're going to put on the front of the card. And we'll go ahead and glue this in. This piece of basic white is 5 1/4 by 4 inches. We'll line it up center-ish. Remember, we strive for ish, not for perfection. I don't know anybody who doesn't like the banana Laffy Taffy now. Oh, Joyce tried some of the Skittles at the farmer's market. They kind of did seem more intense. But you know what? The taffy did not. The taffy, the flavor was a little dissipated, I guess. I don't know how else to say it. Okay, so now we're going to take this piece that we cut and we're just going to glue it right down onto our clouds. Onto our card front, just like that. That is bothering me so very, very much. Woo. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my liquid glue on this because I want to make sure that I can line it up the way I want to. And by using my liquid glue, ooh, that's a lot right there. By using my liquid glue, it allows me to slide it around a little bit once I've placed it if I need to, before it starts to get tacky. So I'm just kind of going along the edge here. Not a whole lot of glue, because you don't want it to, when you push it down, you don't want it to seep all over your card and squish out the edges. Now, Becky doesn't really like the banana, she says. Okay, so now line this back up. And you can see already I'm wiggling it to try to make sure it's lined up where I want it. And I've got glue on my fingers, so of course I'm getting that on my card, but you guys know how I'm going to fix that. I can take my adhesive eraser and just erase it right off. I'm doing this a little extra just because I'm pressing it all down really well too. Kind of 2 birds, 1 stone. So there we go. There's our little cloud background there. Now we have this piece that we used our little stencil that we created. We're going to put the grass on here. I wish I didn't have this little thing in the back. Oh, but you know what? I could probably cover some of that up with flowers. So we're okay there. We're okay. I'm going to use a little bit of my liquid glue again. And you don't have to use liquid glue if you don't have that. Any adhesive really works. It's just that all of our different glues kind of do some of the same things and some things different. So you'll see me using all different adhesives when I make my cards. And sometimes it has everything to do with what happened to be in my line of traffic when I went to grab an adhesive. Sometimes that's all it is. This one's right there, so I'll grab it. Okay, so there we go. Let's go ahead and put this onto our card. Centered-ish. There we go. Wow, that's really, really crooked. think my piece of paper might be a little bit crooked too. That doesn't help. Okay, now let's go ahead and put some of these flowers on, and I'm going to use dimensionals to put them on. I'm going to use my mini dimensionals for the flowers because they're pretty tiny. I saved ones that I've used because, you know, these little edges, well, those are dimensionals too, so I save them. Okay, let's see. Take my Take Your Pick tool. I find that it's easier for me to apply these mini ones with a Take Your Pick tool, just because my fat fingers get in the way. I want to make sure that's not going to show. Good. Okay. And maybe one over there. And one right there. And you know me, I put on probably way more than I need. But I don't like it to sag anywhere. Ow. And you get a lot of dimensionals in a packet, so you might as well use them. You can see I made a boo-boo. I started to stamp on one side of the paper, made a boo-boo, and just flipped it over and used the other side. There. And while we're at it, we might as well put our dimensionals on our fox, and I'm going to use the bigger ones for him. So put one there and there. Yeah, that's definitely overkill on the umbrella, but I didn't want that middle to sag. Look at this poor little guy. He's a tiny little guy, and I've got 8,000 dimensionals on him. Okay, so now let's go ahead and just piece these together, and then our card is, well, our card's almost done. I want to put a few little gems on there. So I'm going to just take off, I'm taking the backs off of my dimensionals right now and just throwing them in the garbage so you're not missing anything exciting. Just my garbage can. Whoops, there's a rogue back where you think you take it off, but it just lands somewhere else on the back of your thing. Okay, so let's put him right about here. Look at him. I know I keep saying that. Look at him. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and take the dimensionals off of the flowers, and we're going to place them. And I'm going to try to strategically place mine so that it covers up that little bit of that edge on the background that I didn't like. Well, look at that. Covered it right up. And then, got one more thing of flowers here. And I just want to kind of tuck the one behind the other so that, you know, it looks like a little, almost like a field of flowers versus just little, instead of little bushes of flowers or bouquets of flowers. And there we go. Now this card is got a little glue booger on it. Now our card is done. Oh, no, it is not. Oh, no, it is not. We've got the Tinsel Gems 4-pack. There's another Tinsel Gems pack that comes with 3 in it. Okay, so let's see here. Got a couple big ones. Put one there. Put one over here. How did I do this on my? And then I'm going to put 3 smaller ones. The rule of thumb is you want to put an odd number on. So if you're putting 2 on, put a third one on. Come back to me. There. Well, I kind of feel like that doesn't line up quite right. But I'm not going to bore you with having to watch me figure out placement all night long, because that's not fun. So here's our little card with the matching envelope and the inside. And if you wanted to write like more of a message, you could put it here, put another piece of white up here. You could also make a little gift card holder to put right there if you wanted. Okay, so let's clean up our space so we can move on to card number 2. That one was probably the most time consuming of the 3. Ribbon. Did it have ribbon on it? I don't think my original had ribbon. No ribbon. I think you know what? Maybe some ribbon up here would have looked cute. I was afraid it might be too much. Okay, so the next card that we're going to use, hold on. The next card uses the sweetest cherries, and you can buy this, I don't know if you can buy it as a bundle anymore, but there is a cherry punch that goes with it. That's great. It stamps out the various pieces, the stem, the leaf, and the cherries. We're not using that tonight, but it is available. And here's the card. Isn't this just kind of a cheery looking card? Just kind of fun. Sweet birthday wishes, and this one is pretty quick and easy to put together. So let's do it. I do not know. John asked if I know where the idea of using an odd number came from and why. I don't know. I just know it's a decorating thing that I've heard. Do you know? And Joyce is losing her mind. Well, you know what? You fit right in with me then. Okay. Whoops. So our card base, this is just a half of a sheet cut this way. It's 8.5 inches by 5.5 inches, scored in the middle at 4 1/4. This is the direction that I was trying to explain folds very naturally. Okay, set that aside for the moment. And for our envelope, we're just going to glue a little strip of designer series paper on. It's 2.5 inches by 6 inches, and this comes from the Brights color family. Our designer series paper, you can buy a pack in every color family where it's got all of the colors and 4 patterns of each color. And so this is the lemon lime twist. So I'm going to take just a little bit of my liquid glue, go around. You want to get it pretty close to the edge, not so close though that when you squish the paper on top of it, it squishes out the edge and gets all over. But if that happens, the adhesive eraser to the rescue. Thanks, Judy. So John says he's heard the same rule of thumb, but doesn't know why. All I know is that I heard that it's more appealing to the eye, but I don't know why that is, or even if they know why that is. I heard it and I believe it, because I do find that when I have an odd number, it looks better to me. It's more balanced. Okay, so now let's go ahead and just trim off the excess here. Just a little bit more. And if it's not perfect, it's not a big deal. There we go. So our envelope is done. I love these big polka dots. I just think they're fun. There. Okay. Now, let's get going on our card. So for the inside, I've got a little strip of the designer series paper and a little strip of the lemon lime twist. We're going to glue these together, and we're going to glue them onto a piece of basic white cardstock that is 5 1/4 by 4. So again, for these kind of things, I like to use my liquid glue so I can kind of slide them around a little if I need to. Oh, Mary Lou Googled it. It says, while even numbers create symmetry, off numbers create interest. When we decorate with odd numbers, we create designs that are fun, casual, and young. Well, that makes sense. Thank you for looking that up. Okay. I don't know why I put it on this piece instead of just putting it on this piece. That would have been so much easier, but I don't always do things the easy way, even when the easy way makes more sense. Okay, so I'm just lining this up. I want to make sure it's centered-ish. Okay. And we'll do a little strip down here to glue it onto our basic white. There. There. Now we'll just trim that extra bit off. Ta-da! And now we can glue that to the inside of our card, and it's out of the way, and I can't lose it. This card base, by the way, that is real red. Just in case you were wondering. Centered-ish. There we go. And now we've got a few layers that we're going to play with here. So for starters, I've got a layer of lemon lime twist that is 5 1/4 by 4. And then I have a layer here of our designer series paper that is 5 1/8 by 3 7/8. We're going to glue those together and just go ahead and put them on the card. Ooh. Just throwing stuff around now. This gives us just a tiny little margin, which I like. It just, I think, gives it a nice little finished look. At first, I wasn't quite sure how well this lemon lime twist went with this real red, just because the real red is more of a blue, bluish red, whereas this green is, I don't know, more of a yellowy green. I just didn't know how well they'd go together. And even at this point, I look at them and I'm like, oh, I'm not so sure. But then once you get all the rest of the stuff on there, it balances it out, and I really like it. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to color the cherries. So for the cherries, I'm going to do these in 2 tones. I'm going to show you how. I'm going to use real red and cherry cobbler. And then for the stems on the cherries, I'm using Parakeet Party. And you know what? This is not, I lied to you. This is not lemon lime twist. This is Parakeet Party from our 2022 to 2024 in colors. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take, let's see, we've got the cherry stamp right there, and we have the stem. I'm going to open them all up. And what I kind of did when I was making these, normally I would do like all of the cherries and then add the stems. But I wanted to make sure that I was leaving enough room between the cherries for the stems in their completion so that they didn't kind of overlap. So I do a cherry and then it's stem, and then a cherry and then it's stem. Okay. Now I have one of my little sponge daubers. I love these. You put it on the end of your finger like an olive at Thanksgiving. And the first thing you do is go ahead and ink up your stamp with the lighter color, which in this case is real red. And then I'm going to get some ink of the darker color, which is cherry cobbler. And I'm just going to kind of go along the edge of the cherry, just like this. And I'm going to stamp it, put it right there. See how it gives just a little bit of a darker edge there? And then line this guy up. There we go. And I probably should be cleaning my stamp in between so that I'm not getting the darker color on my real red ink pad. But I think I get most of that off when I stamp the image, so I'm not too terribly worried about it. Okay, let's do another one right about there. And we'll do its stem. And I'm going to be doing the cherries going all different directions. Oops, I almost forgot to do that edge. So this takes a little bit of time. It's not bad. I mean, it's not like we're doing 100 of the cherries, but it does take a little bit longer when you do what I'm doing by adding that second color and then also stopping with each one to stamp the stem. Okay, let's put this one right there. And then there's just going to be a little bit of a stem on this one. Well, I guess actually most of it's going to show. And let's do one more cherry. Now, if you choose, instead of doing the designer series paper on the envelope, you could do the cherries too. Let's see, let's do it this way. This one's not going to have a stem. Ooh, that kind of turned out yucky, didn't it? So, fortunately, I can see where I'm stamping, kind of. But I'm going to try to line it up. There we go, that's better. And then, off the stamp. And I think I'm going to add a couple of stems just coming from extra places just to kind of look like there were more cherries there. I'm trying to get some of this extra ink off. It's not all going to come off, but I'm just trying to get some of the extra off. So we'll do maybe another stem going this way. There. That one I guess could have come out a little more, but not a big deal. Now, 2 of our cards tonight are going to use heat embossing. And since I didn't do it on the first one, I bet you can guess. We're doing it on this one. Now, before we do the heat embossing, I want to take the stamp that says sweet. It's nice and big and bold. And when I have a bold stamp like that I want to stamp in black, I have found that the Stays On ink works a little bit better for that. I don't know what it is about the design of the pad itself or the ink. I'm not really sure. But when I want it to be really nice and bold, Stays On seems to work a little bit better. So now Stays On does, it does stain your stamp. Not a big deal. It doesn't hurt the stamp. It washes off, so it's not like it gets on subsequent cards when you don't want it to. Holy cow. Oh, see how it doesn't look quite right? Let's see if I can get that to line up. That's going to be kind of dangerous. Let's see if I can do it. It didn't line up quite right, but that's all right. I don't like how it's kind of grainy like that because the whole reason I used the StazOn was so that it wouldn't be grainy like that. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and glue this onto the card. Oops. And honestly, what was the measurement of this piece? This piece is 3.5 by like 4 3/4. Because I wanted a little bit bigger of a margin there so that you could see the polka dots. I don't like that I did that. That makes me sad. Okay, now we're going to take, I have a little strip of black, just a scrap, and I have Versamark ink. This is a watermark ink. What it's intended to do is if you stamp it on a colored cardstock, it'll give you an image that's just slightly darker than that cardstock like a watermark does. And then the other thing you can use it for is heat embossing because it's a very sticky ink. So when you pour embossing powder on it, it works. It sticks to it. You know, I re-inked my StazOn pad last time, and maybe that's it. Maybe it's got too much ink on it. I don't know. Okay, so I'm going to take my Versamark. I'm going to take my sentiment, which just says birthday wishes, and ink up your stamp. Now, a good rule of thumb with StazOn, once you think you have enough, you don't have enough. So get more, because the stickier, the better. And I'm just going to stamp it on here. You don't really have to worry about it being straight or anything because we're going to cut it out. Like I said, StazOn ink is a very sticky ink, so it does take a little bit more to clean off your stamp. It's not hard, you just got to make sure you get a little extra love to get that sticky off. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my powder and I'm just going to pour it over the strip. Notice I put my ink pad away before I did that, and you really do, because if you have some sort of an accident where you end up with the powder going everywhere, which I did when I was making this card, you'll end up getting the powder on your ink pad, and basically that ruins the ink pad. You'll never get it off. So I'm going to set that aside for the moment and pour this extra back in. Put the powder away before I spill it everywhere. Now it's going to be a little loud while I do the heat embossing. It takes a moment for it to heat up, and then what it does is it melts that powder. See how it looks kind of grainy? I'm trying to see if you can see it on the camera. It looks kind of grainy because that's what it is. It's little grains. Is it going to focus on me? You can kind of see that. It's little grains. And so the heat tool heats them up so that they melt together. I have the same problem, Kathy. Kathy says she has a hard time with the white because it isn't really solid. I have found sometimes if I do it with the white ink and then emboss, sometimes that works a little better because at least there's white behind it. With this, because the font was small, it seemed to work a little bit better for me. And I'm just trying to give it a little extra moment to make sure I get it all melted. Okay. Shake it just to cool it off a little bit. Not that I think it matters, but I do it because for whatever reason I think I need to. Okay, so now I'm just going to fussy cut around my work. Remember, when you're fussy cutting, move your paper, not your scissors. And the other thing to remember is when you're doing words like I am, if you just kind of wiggle your scissors a little bit like this, it creates the illusion of cutting right around the curves of the individual letters, which is what it's doing, but I'm not doing it as precisely as it ends up looking or giving the appearance that I'm doing. Now this doesn't work when you're cutting out like a regular stamped image, but with words it does. And the other thing is, if you think you kind of boogered it up, keep going. That, human nature, you're going to want to stop right there and fix it before you move on. Don't, because you might find when you're all done, it actually works into the bigger scheme of things just fine, and there's nothing to go back and fix. But if there is, you can always go back and fix it. But if you stop and fix it, it's really hard to get back into the groove to where it looks uniform. And those are just things that I have learned from doing. There. Now I've got a little bit of a edge there that I don't like, so I'll trim that off. And there we go. The next step, I have this little strip of our designer series paper in Parakeet Party. And I'm going to glue my birthday wishes on here. Just about kind of the middle of my letters is going to go, this edge is going to go right along the middle of the letters. So let's take a peek here. So a little bit of glue just on the very bottom, very, very light touch of the glue. And I want to center it here on this strip. Okay. And now I'm going to use my dimensionals again. Take the backs off. And I'm going to put it right about here. Now originally, when I made this, I did not put dimensionals behind that. I did it where I put the dimensionals behind the black piece, the birthday wishes, and I glued the strip down flat. And the designer series piece kind of blended into the card a little bit more because there's so much white along its edges. So popping it up made a big difference. And that's that card. That's the whole card. Quick and easy. Ta-da! That's a really good point, Joyce. It is important to stick your tongue out while you cut. I don't know how I do that. I've never thought of it. But it is something that we do, isn't it? Okay, let's clean up and we'll get going on our last card that I have for you tonight. Okay, this card is using the inked and tiled stamp set. I love this stamp set. I'm using the Stylish Shapes dies. And we're going to use kind of a strip technique. So you can, I'm using the designer series paper that coordinates with that stamp set. It is called Inked Botanicals. And this way I get to show off several different pieces of it. We're going to do a little bit of heat embossing. And our matching card, of course. And there's the inside. So what we're going to do, let's see, we have our card base. It's a basic card base at 8.5 inches by 5.5 inches, scored in the middle at 4 1/4. Set that aside for the moment. Now I'm going to wait to do the inside because we got to put a lot of little pieces together first. Let's do the envelope. I think this strip ended up being a little more than 2.5 inches this way just because it was a scrap I had. But normally it just needs to be 2.5 inches by 6 inches. Okay. So a little glue around the edge. I love this print. I love this whole pack of paper. I think it's just beautiful. I love the colors. I love the prints. I think it's a great pack of paper. Just kind of checking something here. Becky, if you are still on, I saw you earlier. You were our winner last week for the drawing, and I don't have your mailing address. So if you send it to me either at my email or a private message here on Facebook, I can get that in the mail to you. Okay, so now we're just going to cut off the extra here. Accidentally cut off a little bit of my envelope. Doesn't matter. Okay, so have our envelope done. Next, we're going to make these little strippy strips. Here's a strip for the inside. And then I also have this little square that we're going to make that little banner, this little banner from. I also have this itty bitty little circle. Itty bitty. We're going to stamp the word hello, and we're going to use Lost Lagoon for that. Now the card itself, the color I'm using is Pool Party, but I like it when my sentiment is a little darker than the card itself. Now the stamp I'm using actually says hello friend, so I'm going to take some of my Post-it tape, and I'm going to cover up the comma after the word hello, as well as the word friend. So all I have here is the word hello. This is the most important part. Remember to take the tape off. Okay. It is a little hard to line up when it's so tiny. There we go. It's not centered super well, but that's okay. Okay. The other thing I'm going to do with this is I'm going to take my little piercing mat, and I'm going to take my Take Your Pick tool, and I'm going to punch a hole right there. I go through it twice. I go once through the front and once through the back, just to make it a nice smooth hole, because we're going to have some ribbon going through that, some baker's twine. Which reminds me, I colored the baker's twine. Let's go ahead and do that now so it's dry by the time we need it. I would have used white, but I'm out of white. So in the Baker's Essential Pack, you get white, you get vanilla, you get gray, black, and crumb cake. So what I did is I used my vanilla, and I took one of my Stampin' Blends. Let me find it. My Pool Party Stampin' Blend. You take your brush tip and you can just color. Just color along. Just like that. You kind of roll it over as you do so you can get, make sure you get all the way around it. It's a little trickier than ribbon only because it's round like that, whereas ribbon is flat, so it's a little bit easier. This can be a little hard on your blends, so if you do it a lot, you'll find yourself having to replace them a little more frequently. But you know what? They're not super expensive, And when you have to replace something because you've used it a lot, that's not a bad problem to have. Now, if you're having to replace it and you've hardly used it, there's a problem. But if you've used it a lot and it's lived a good life for you, then you're in good shape. Okay, these are alcohol-based markers, so they dry pretty quickly, but I do like to try to remember to do it first so that I can set it aside, let it finish drying while I make my card. Okay, so I have all these strips. If I need to cut more, I will. But I have all these little strips, some left over from when I made up my card, some that are just extras that I cut so that I'd have them. And I like to use liquid glue for this. And what I have found works well, what I used to do in the past, if you've seen me do this before, I would put glue on the strip and then put the strip down, and you end up with glue on your fingers, and it kind of makes a little bit of a mess. So something that I tried a little different this time, I'll show you. Put a little bit of glue on here like this. Now, the glue may start to dry. Make sure you put it on the edges, because if your paper, when you cut it off, if it's not glued down on the edges, it starts to kind of fold up a little. You don't want that. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let's take this nice bright, this is the Calypso Coral, and I'm going to put this one right here, like that. Another thing that's good to do when you're doing something like this is to do it on one of our silicone mats. That way, if you get glue, it doesn't get on your background surface and you don't have to worry about it making a mess or sticking to other projects or anything like that. So I'm trying to find some of these other patterns that I liked. This one's already cut, so don't waste a big piece. Whoops, I might need to use a big piece. Yep, I'm gonna need to use a bigger piece anyway. There's a little tiny edge here that a little tiny piece is going to have to stick to. I did my strips the opposite direction as what I did the first time, and actually the way I did it the first time, you had a little open piece like that, but it doesn't show because the bow is in the way. So that might be something worth paying attention to when you make your own. And let's see, what else have we got here? Oh, that's a good one. Okay, let's see, what else have we got? I like this little guy. But again, doing this with the liquid glue allows me to slide them a little bit if I need to. And I think I want a bolder, well, that works okay, I guess, right there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, if I put it upside down, then I can really press down those pieces and not worry about lifting them if glue sticks to my fingers. And now we're just going to go ahead and we're going to trim all the way around our square or rectangle. That's a little crooked. Get off. Okay, now, see, that turned out really cute. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our snips and right down the middle here, I'm going to cut up about 3/4 of an inch. And then you cut from the corners to the end of that middle snip, just like that. There we go. And now you've made your banner. Let me throw these little pieces away. We're going to do this strip real quick. Same idea. Okay. And we can use our little shorter pieces here pretty easily. Get on there. There you go. And let's do maybe a yellow. Other, a little green would be nice. Now, when I was making my first one, I was a little slow on this, and some of this glue dried up. Just add a little more glue. It's not a big deal. Like this. And then last little bit, let's put that right there. We're just going to trim around the edge of the paper just like we did on the little banner. I just butt my scissors right up against the edge of that cardstock, and then for the most part I get a straight line, but you can see here where it didn't. I'll come back and trim that when it's all done. Because it's hard to do when you've got all those little strips sticking out everywhere. I mean, hard to get it perfect. The other thing is you could do like a strip that's bigger and wider than what you actually need, and then use your trimmer to cut it down to size. Okay, so there's our piece for the inside. We have a great little mess here, don't we? But now comes the easy. Oh, we still need to do the embossing. I was going to say, now comes the easy part, which actually that's pretty easy too. But I was going to say we're ready to assemble, but we're not ready to assemble yet. I just want to get some of these pieces out of the way. Okay, So now we can go ahead and take our piece that is designed for the inside, a piece of basic white that is 5 1/4 by 4. And this time I chose to glue the strip right along the bottom of the piece of white. I think because of the angle of the little strips, I didn't really like the look of having the white margin along the bottom like that as much. So just stick it on there so that it's right up against the edge, and then trim off the extra. There we go. This looks a tiny bit crooked. Okay, let's go ahead and glue this to the inside of the card. Oh goodness, my herd of elephants is back. Centered-ish. Okay, so now I have a piece here that I did it so that it is, I have to think this through, it is 4 3/4 by 3 1/2. So it gave me, I wanted a little bit wider margin here. Then I'm going to take my Versamark ink again. I'm going to take my little piece of paper and I'm going to get my powder out. And the stamp I'm using is this nice big leaf. My stem just fell off. Hang on. The stem from the cherries, and I don't want to lose it. So get it back on that block. Okay, so now I'm going to ink up my stamp really well. Remember, as soon as you think you have enough, you don't have enough. So get lots of that goopy stuff on there. And I'm just going to go ahead and stamp this kind of at an angle, a little bit above the middle. I mean, it's like not really centered. Put my ink away, get the powder out. You do want to go ahead and try to get that powder on pretty quickly though, because you don't want the ink to start to dry and then it's not as sticky. So we've got the white on there. So now we'll put this away. I'm going to clean off my stamp now. Once you have the powder on, you can go ahead and take the time to clean your stamp, but just you want to get the powder onto the ink fairly quickly. Sorry about all the shaking there. Okay, so let's go ahead and heat this up. We're going to melt that powder. And the other nice thing about this particular stamp set, earlier we were talking about how sometimes with the white you can't get a really solid image, but this stamped image isn't a solid image. So if your powder doesn't totally solidify to where you've got that nice solid image, that's okay. It's not supposed to look that way. You can tell that it's melting when it starts to look shiny instead of grainy. Okay. All right, now we're ready to put this baby together. Now what I used to put it on the card, I used one of my foam adhesive sheets, and it's just a little smaller than what I want. So what I do, I'm gonna use my big scissors for this, is I cut it into 3 strips, and I can spread them apart a little bit. That way I still am able to cover the whole thing from left to right, and not have to worry about sagging. So I'll do my outer edges first, and then my middle. And if you don't have these sheets are super convenient and I love them, but if you don't have them, they're basically just a giant dimensional, so use your dimensionals. And so centered-ish. There we go. Now I'm going to use some dimensionals to go ahead and put my banner on there. It's kind of funny because you put the banner on there and it just doesn't look right at all until you get, once you get those bows on there, then it looks right. It's kind of funny. So take the backs off of the dimensionals. Okay, and I'm just putting it down here on the lower part of the leaf. I want to make sure it's straight. And then I've got a little bit of my Pool Party grosgrain ribbon. I'm just going to tie a nice little bow, maybe. And then, you got to fiddle with it for an hour to make sure that it lays the way you want it to. Could it be that I just did that in under an hour? Okay, I like to wait to trim the tails until I have it on there and I get a kind of a feel for where they're going to end up. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little hello. I'm going to put a dimensional on the back. I'm going to take my baker's twine that we colored and I'm going to poke it through there. And now what I'm going to do, let me show you. I find it's easier to tie the bow if this thing is sitting in place. So what I did is I was kind of weird about the way I did this. I took a glue dot. I guess I could tear this down a little bit, couldn't I? Take a glue dot, and I glued that bit of my baker's twine onto the back of the bow. And then I put another bit on there, just I don't know if I really needed it, but if it's worth doing, it's worth doing excessively. Then I laid this down in the corner where I wanted it, and I put my little hello right where I wanted it, because it's going to be held in place by that dimensional, right? And now I'll tie my bow, a second bow. Same thing with this one, kind of fiddle with it a little bit, get it the size you want it. I personally wanted it to be smaller, much smaller than my other bow, but some people like them to be the same size. They both look nice. They're just different looks. There we go. And trim your tails. So I'll start by trimming these right here. This one is a little long. There we go. And I think I'll trim these right here. And there, oh, this one's just a little bit long. There we go. So you've got two different bows going on. They don't have to lay together perfectly because one clearly is to support the hello while the other, you know, is to decorate the banner. And then we're going to take a few of these iridescent pastel gems, which I think are so absolutely gorgeous. And really, any of these colors would work on this card. I chose to use the ones that are a little bit more like pool party, but with this particular paper, any one of these would work. So let's see here. One there. One there. Oh yeah, and you have to tell yourself, I'm putting it here and here. I don't know why, but I think that's a rule. And here, see, I'm following the rules. And here, there. And this card is now done. That one was really pretty quick and easy. I mean, it took a little time to do those strips, but other than that, putting it all together was pretty easy, right? So let's clean up the mess. We'll take a last peek at what we made tonight. If you enjoyed what we did tonight, and I sure hope you did, I love it when you give me thumbs up and smiles and all that good stuff. It makes me feel good, but it also tells the algorithms, hey, more people might want to see this and they get my name out there. If you are following me on YouTube, make sure you hit the little bell icon so that you get notified when I update with when I upload new videos. If you aren't following me on YouTube, you might want to go on over there and check it out. Just look me up by Stamp Happenings. And you'll find me. Make sure you follow and click the bell so that you get notifications. Okay, so let's see here. Clean up our mess. Okay. So tonight we made this fun one with the banner. And if you are interested in any of the, making any of these cards yourself or something similar, or you just need to stock up on some supplies, I would love to earn your business. You can shop online at heathersides.stampinup.net. Please use this host code. It helps me to continue to provide these videos for free and prizes and all that good stuff. But if your purchase is over $150, please don't use that code because you'll have some free stuff coming to you from Stampin' Up. I want to make sure that you are the one who receives them. Remember, right now through the end of the month, we have a special going on that once you spend $50, in every increment of $50 that you spend, you get $5 reward points, whatever you want to call it, to use on a later purchase with Stampin' Up. So at $50, you earn $5. At $100, you earn another $5, so a total of $10. And it does it with every order you make. Now, it doesn't combine the orders. So like if you did an order of 25 and then turned around later and did another 25, it doesn't count it. But if you do an order of 50, then it does. Hey, Cheryl, welcome. Looks like you're getting in here late, but you can watch the replay. We made some fun cards tonight. We also have, gosh, we had a refresh in our clearance rack. We've got all sorts of stuff going on right now. So make sure you check out my website, heathersides.stampinup.net, to see what's going on. But be sure to contact me if you have any questions about any of the above, or even if you just want to say hello. I love it when you guys drop cards in the mail to me. So thank you so much for doing that. I really, really like it. So if anybody has any questions, let me know. I hope you guys have a great week, and I will see you next week, same time, same place, Wednesday night here at Stamp Happenings on Facebook. See you later, guys.